Gary, thank you for your service.
Hey, thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
No, Gary's one of our military.
Yeah. No, thank you.
Where was your last deployment, Gary?
Task Force Bastard out of Kuwait, Afghanistan, and Saudi. I'm retired now. You know, long time retired, but Comcast ready now, right?
There you go.
So yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. No, thank you. I appreciate everything. So I'll stand by in case we have some.
So Bree, whenever you want to get started, we could do a roll call and then we can run.
Okay, I will apologize in advance because I'm gonna probably not do justice to some of your names. But yes, we can start with roll call. So Ted Vitale.
I'm here.
Yvonne Shepherd.
Caribou.
Okay. How about if I do that? Nolan.
It's fine, I'm here.
Okay, thank you. Steve. I'm guessing he's not here because he's on a township tour. Steve Georgie.
Here.
Jason Monday.
Here.
Mark Johnson.
Here.
Barbara George Clyde. Here. Brian Cranbeer. Michael Myers.
Good morning.
Oh, there's Brian.
Nice to see you.
Thank you. Phil Stallenborger.
He's going to be 30 minutes late.
Okay. Teresa Sunday. James Wycombe.
I'm here.
Paul Wartz. And David Bull. Okay. Well, I know we have a quorum.
Yep.
So with that, Teddy?
Yeah. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending. This is the last Governor's Broadband Task Force meeting. So thank you for those who joined online. Obviously, thank you to the folks in the room. In particular, thanks to Comcast for hosting us today. I think great building, great meeting room, and it's also great for task force members, which I think we've only met like 4 or 5 times in person in the last 3.5 years. So it's great to be able to get together. We've got a pretty good packed agenda for today, which will then be followed by lunch. Just kind of quickly going through the agenda. We'll go through the approval of the meeting minutes here in a second. I'll turn it over to Comcast for some opening remarks. Then, as usual, if Devin's on, we'll do a legislative update, see kind of what's going on at the legislative side today. As usual, an Office of Broadband Development update from Bree. Tom Karsh is also with us today, so we'll do an NTIA update. Take a quick break after that, and then there's a presentation of the National Skills Coalition and Digital Equity. And then what we wanted to do just to close the meeting was to go around the room and for those from the task force that are here, as well as the ones online, just kind of a recap of the last 3.5 years. How did it go? What are some thoughts? In the future, we can also take some notes about what could we be doing a little bit differently as a task force. And I know it's restarting all over again, so new folks will have to apply and all those types of things. But it would be good to hand the new task force coming in with sort of a list of things to think about. But it's been a great journey, and we were just talking a second ago. You know, I guess it's fitting for a broadband task force to have met mainly on broadband. Like literally, like we have actually our very first meeting was in person, and that was in December of 2019. And then after that, the next meeting was in March, I think. And so that started out with the pandemic, so we went virtual, and then we stayed virtual all the way through, and we had a couple of virtual meetings last year, or hybrid meetings last year. So, but it's great to be able to get together and close it off in person. So first thing is the approval of the meeting minutes. Those were attached in the meeting invitation. Any questions, comments, or concerns about the meeting agenda? No, doesn't look like it, so we will assume the meeting minutes are approved. With that, turn it over to Comcast, maybe for some opening remarks.
All right, I'm Keelan Hove. I'm the Regional Senior Vice President for the Midwest region, and welcome to our region office. It's great to have you here. Steve, I know I almost killed you coming out of the restroom. I'm so thankful I didn't. If you weren't there for the near collision, I feel terrible. But on Mondays, we really encourage people to be flexible and work from home if you desire. And so the office is quiet on Mondays, so I forgot there were a few extra people coming in and out of the restroom. But Comcast, in case you aren't aware, we have about 1,000 employees in the Minnesota area that work for us in the region. And then in addition to that, we serve nearly 1 million customers. So when we think about Comcast and our commitment to the region, I hope it's evident by just our participation, the interactions you've had with us, but we're really committed to creating an environment that has digital equity for all. And so as we look at being a media and technology company, we realize we have the platform, we have the network and the technology to make an impact. And so obviously we're doing all we can. And when I think about when this task force formed, it sounds like right before COVID officially hit. I don't think anyone at that time realized how important broadband access was going to be so quickly to every individual within our state. And so we quickly found, as you did, that really broadband and internet access was the oxygen that fueled our homes, our businesses, obviously our education, etc. And so as we look at kind of how we as a company are leading in, there were 2 key areas that we really have focused in on over the last few years. And the first is really supporting small businesses. We know they're the heartbeat of America and surely of Minnesota. And so as we looked at small businesses, we found that minority-owned small businesses owned by people of color, or women-owned businesses were disproportionately impacted by COVID. And so we leaned in and we actually gave over $2 million in grants to small businesses, cash grants, allowing them to use it as they needed. And then in addition to that, we did over 200 technology and marketing, I guess you'd kind of deem makeovers, supporting these small businesses in that way. So we felt if we could give back in some way, that was just one core area for us to lean in. And then in addition to that, we launched live zones. And I'll be frank, this really came out of COVID. Immediately when people were sent home, we knew that there were many people who didn't have the, maybe we would deem the luxury of internet at home, and yet they were so dependent on it for their children to take part in online classes, some to be able to continue to work from home so they wouldn't lose their jobs, or even telehealth, right, and medicine. And so we launched these live zones that we have 118 now here in the Twin Cities area that allows individuals to go into these live zones to access the internet. And with that, we're also doing digital equity education to really ensure even adults understand how to utilize the internet and what it can mean to them. So if you went around to different community centers, nonprofit organizations, etc., you'll find these live zones set up. And man, some of the stories between Rise and live zones, I've never been more proud of the impact the company has made than being able to sit down with some of these individuals who have said, without this live zone, my child wouldn't have been able to do their homework, or small businesses that said their doors were coming to a close. And so it's just a reminder that all of us play as corporate citizens to really invest back into the community. But as we look at our network and broadband, we knew that we had to really continue to invest in ensuring that we had the platform needed for the future. And as we're all more dependent on internet access, and I know no one knows that better than this critical task force here, we've invested over $437 million in the last 2 years in our network here in Minnesota. And we're not going to slow down. We're committed to continuing to invest. We want to ensure that it's a network that's powered for future generations. And we know if we do that, that Minnesota as a whole will prosper in the long run. So I just thank you for being part of such a critical task force. You're doing all the work behind the scenes to make sure companies such as ourselves and others step up. But we not only want to ensure that internet is available for everyone, but that it's also affordable. And so as we look at those things, we launched Internet Essentials, and I don't know how many of you are familiar with Internet Essentials, but it's really tied to our digital equity commitment. And over a decade ago, we launched Internet Essentials. And so for $9.95, individuals who are considered low income or on any state, what's the word I'm looking for? Program, assistance program, they can get for $9.95 high-speed internet access from us. And when you couple that with the Affordable Connectivity Program, the ACP, for $30 that they can get back, you know, we have now individuals who are getting free internet. It doesn't cost them anything. And in fact, with our mobile solution, they can even add a mobile line in and things they would have never had in the past. So I think it's just a great example of states and federal government and companies coming together to ensure that everybody is served and everyone has an equal opportunity to prosper. So thanks again for being here today. It's an honor to have you. I am gonna step out and let the real work be done. But don't ever hesitate to reach out to me personally. I'll make sure you guys have my contact information if I can assist in any way. We're on this journey with you, and it's just great to partner, so thank you.
No questions, Steve? Go ahead.
I'm just wondering, what's your footprint look like in the state, because up there on there, you don't exist.
We don't exist. Yes, I'll give you, our footprint is primarily in the Twin Cities metro. It goes out to, we just extended into the Wayzata area, down to Eden Prairie and Chaska, then down south, not to Lakeville, it's broken out, and then right up to Wisconsin. You'll find in the kind of cable industry, we've always had our footprints that we primarily just focused in our own individual footprints. And so we are not up north where you are right now in the Iron Range, but hopefully with some of this funding, you're seeing other providers quickly opening to build up in those areas.
I like
Like competition.
You like competition? That's good. We do too. We do too. So, you know, it'll be interesting to see. Yep.
We don't have competition.
Who do you have up there for your, that's what I thought, okay, yeah, so, and I think, you know, our industry's changing a lot on the cable side, and so we don't know what the future holds in regards to us competing directly with each other. I guess time will tell, but.
You see I'm sorry, Debbie, but you see it's shifting any because of the COVID to more, you know, the fiber to the premise or internet services then?
Oh, spend or where we would go
yeah,
potentially?
I mean, the platform basically kind of shifted away from cable, because cable has just gone crazy.
Well, I mean, and keep in mind, cable, if we do offer fiber to the prem, and everything we're putting in the ground right now is really that 10G future generation network. So yes, now it takes time for every cable provider to upgrade their network to that technology, and I'm sure even in some of the more remote areas. But I think what you're gonna find is, as we all continue to become even more dependent on it, there's always new players in the game. I mean, I just saw a chart that showed 13 competitors and it was any small player that sells anything that we would sell. 13, you know, like 5 years ago, and now there were like 72, right? Because they're all playing in different segments. But I'm confident you'll continue to find even improved services and network connectivity, and hopefully, you know, from a value proposition, it'll quickly align.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, well, thank you so much for hosting us and for the opening remarks. I think Comcast does some great work, and we really do appreciate that for the facility. So, thank you.
Thank you. Make yourself at home here. Hopefully, you know where the coffee, the water, the restrooms are. But anytime you need to come back, you're always welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the next agenda item. I do see Devin online, so Devin, if you can hear us, turn it over to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Teddy. Slides here as usual, just a few while. showing up for everybody?
Yep.
Okay, good. All right, perfect. A lot starting to move this week. So today is, or this entire week is basically everybody showing their cards. As you remember, at the beginning of the year, the governor shows his budget priorities, and now the House and Senate have had, several months of hearings, and they are showing their cards, their priorities, what they want to move forward with. So today, the Senate Ag Committee will amend their omnibus language in the Senate File Number 255, and likewise tomorrow in the House. The House hasn't released their language yet, but the Senate has, and so I will put that in the chat. If you're curious, the link to their omnibus language. Broadband is all the way down at the bottom. And today, I believe we just probably be testifiers in both in Senate Ag, and tomorrow just testifiers in House Ag, and then they will start marking up those bills on Wednesday and Thursday. So what is included, at least so far, in the Senate bill, $700,000 for the office. It was nice to see that included on the first go around. Sometimes it gets forgotten, and you have to remind people that the office does need funding too. We have $100 million in total for broadband. I know we were all pushing for more, and this is just the number that the powers that be landed on. So in the Senate bill, it's split 60-40 border to border, low population density. You'll see it 30 million each year. If you're reading the bill and you see that 50, I lost my screen. Are people still seeing, Teddy, can you still see my slides? I don't know what screen this is.
No, not yet. You might need to hang on a second. There's maybe some changes. All right, you want to try to share again, Devin?
Yeah, see it. How's that?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's back.
Back? Okay. If you're reading the Senate language, you might see that it says 55 million for border to border in the first year. That's just the $25 million that was appropriated for the base last year. So it's still just totaled 100 million money. It doesn't have, the Senate version doesn't have the low population density program codified. It just has it in session law. I think the House has the full program codified. And then there's some old language about allowing up to 75% if there's federal funding involved. I think that's maybe some language we'll need to work on. And then lastly, it doesn't have that, at least that I noticed, it doesn't have that permanent tweak to border, allowing up to $10 million for any given project. And the last slide here, some things coming up. April 5th, April 11th is the spring break, so members will digest these omnibus bills, take them back to their districts, and talk about them. And basically now to the end of session is aligning the priorities between the House, the Senate, and the governor's office. So broadband is not likely to pass as a standalone. I know personally I was hopeful that we could just get it done and not have to run it along with the ag bill, but some people laughed at me, and here I stand corrected. So it will, I was told it will travel in the ag omnibus. And then, yeah, after that, you can expect that the House and Senate will pass their versions of the omnibus bills and then just negotiate with the conference committee. So usually all of this stuff, the targets, the conference committee passing all the omnibus bills happens later, but things are moving fast this year and happening earlier. So hopefully we get done on time. Yeah, that's all I've got for today.
Thank you, Devin. Questions for Devin?
Devin, did you say 60-40 at one point for the split?
Yep.
Instead of 50-50, 60-40?
60 million for.
Oh, 60 million, not the
It's,
split of,
Yeah,
okay.
60
Not
million
the match.
for-
Thank you,
Yeah,
not the
yeah,
match.
yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Correct.
That was,
Yes,
all right,
correct.
got it. Thank you.
Steve?
Devin, could you send us, because I've testified in both committees, and what you're describing doesn't sound like anything I've seen to date, so if you've got something new, could you send that? Email that version
Something
to
new
us?
is the new, bill language?
Yeah, the revision.
Yep,
So
I will
Devin,
send that over, maybe to Carol.
Yeah, I know you put it in the chat, but I think not everybody has access to that right now, so if you could just email it to Carol and you can send it out.
Yeah, it's unlike what you've heard because, you know, we're all coming in with 276 million is our goal. And then, you know, the House and Senate leadership along with the governor's office, in their kind of target negotiations just landed at 100 million, so that will change. You know, what's allowed for border to border, what's available for low population density program.
Has there been conversations, Devin, with the governor's office, or has it just been the respective House committee and Senate committee?
We met with all three, so the prior 2-3 weeks or so, they were all kind of working on their targets between the leaders there. And so we went in and presented the case for broadband and the need, and you know, the leadership is, you know, it's a lot of metro focused members, and I think they're just trying to balance out priorities amongst all the various issue areas. So, you know, of course, we'd like to see more, but we'll have to just fight another day.
Other questions for Devin? All right. Not hearing any in the room, or not seeing any hands up online, so thank you for that update, Devin. Always appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, we'll go to the update from the Office of Broadband Development. So, Bree, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, and just want to put a plug, Devin runs around incredibly hard. We are not his only topic area, but we spend a lot of time together all over the place and over the weekend chatting, and so we're just really fortunate to have him in our corner and advocating for broadband. With that, so yes, I don't really have anything to add with him on the legislative updates, but it's been a great learning experience. A lot of people really helping through the process. Appreciate all the associations and those reaching out and helping me when I have questions on guiding the work. So thank you. If you're not aware, Steve Bensky is gone today because they're in the middle of township tour, which the Office of Broadband has been joining them. We have members of my team across the state going in, giving a couple presentations, making sure that our grassroots people on the ground are aware of the services we provide, as well as the planning we're doing around the individual equity work, sharing the ACP program, line extension, all of those things. I think they've been very productive, and it's also been really fun to get faces with names for our office, since a lot of them were hired during the pandemic and are virtual working remotely. So just really thank all of them, and Hannah's here today, so she's been on several of them as well. I just wanted to put a plug in while we are going out and about. We do have flyers that are available. I know we all want to be online and techy, and we can all download these, but you know, handing out something at these meetings has been really nice too. And so if you need line extension flyers, ACP flyers, anything on just simple what is broadband and how can you advocate in the region, let us know. We do have some good resources there. With that being said, we are also in the midst of hiring, and currently we have 1 job posted. Hopefully next couple weeks we'll have up to 3 more posted, so really trying to gear up for all the work ahead. So would love to get some good candidates in there, so share that widely if you are able and willing. As far as program updates, line extension right now, as of this morning, has a little over 1,700 applicants so far. We, again, the first 6 months ends in May, so continue to tell people to sign up and pass along those resources. Again, that doesn't mean those, residents or businesses are eligible. They might be being served by the round that was, announced in, March, or this upcoming round, or somewhere along the line. But it's really nice to see, people having an opportunity to advocate and put their names in there, as well as the unintended of consequences is, as providers and ISPs, you can see pocket areas. We're updating our maps every week, and you can get a good visual across the state where people are really feeling like, you know, we don't have service. So, that's a nice resource, I think, for all of us. So feel free to use that and contact us with questions. Let's see, so currently, we're in the challenge process of this past grant round that closed in early March. And the team will be, ranking, are in the process of ranking now. And I also just wanna remind everyone that, you know, that huge historic investment that we announced in December is the team is working incredibly hard to execute contracts, get everything signed, and we've even had our first reimbursement request. So know that we keep plugging along, but they're working really incredibly hard. Let's see, the next thing is just a reminder, all of you, the task force applications are still open. I think the soft deadline is April 3rd now, so it got moved up to be on the task force. If you're interested in reapplying, please do. If you know people that would be good, please encourage that. We would love to have a large pool of diverse candidates, not only regionally, but also backgrounds and organizational structures too. And then the last thing I just wanted to do is share a little note and present some certificates to all of our task force members for your service. So, on behalf of Governor Walz, Lieutenant Governor Flanagan, and Temporary Commissioner Kevin McKinnon, we would like to thank all of the Governor's Task Force on Broadband members for your time, leadership, and dedication during your term on the task force. Your expertise advising broadband policy, work towards achieving the state broadband goals, and the comprehensive work on digital inclusion is recognized and appreciated. Thank you each for your thoughtful contributions to the annual report and helping to identify the needs, barriers, and gaps, as well as contributing to ideas to how Minnesota can achieve its goals of access, inclusion, affordability. We hope you will continue to play a role in advocacy, education, and deployment in the years to come as we work to achieve border-to-border broadband to all Minnesotans. And so each one of you, if you're not here, I'll certainly get them mailed out, but there is a certificate of recognition for your work and your time. And so we'll be sure that everybody gets their certificate as well. And that's all I have, but I would also, if you had a minute, to allow maybe Hannah to just give a brief update on her digital equity work.
One question, one question, when do you think you'll be through the March 2nd application?
Well, we have a 30-day window for the challenge process, and then after that, it's a matter of staff being able to get the time to do all of the ranking and going through each and every application. And then after that, it goes, has to go through some approval process, and then ultimately, the commissioner and the governor. So, hopefully, I would say late spring, maybe like May, I don't know.
Okay.
How's that?
Thank you. I like that.
But yes, hopefully before we get too far in, and I don't know if anybody saw the Fierce magazine article I was in, and the headline something is broadband official talks weather and topography, and I had to explain how does your construction grow? And it's like, well, we still have frost in the ground. Well, what does that mean? It means you can't get in the ground. No, but obviously, like, different parts of the nation are a little different. So, and then also just explaining, we have karst areas, we have bluffs, like all of the things. So it was actually a very good article. I thought in the end, I thought it was just getting a little quote, but so sometimes it's just taking the time to do that education and understanding we all come from different places. So yes.
Could you give a number of the total amount of applicants for the low density grant program?
Yes, so we had 20 applicants for about a little over $80 million in this round. Now that doesn't, we rank them. So
Right.
that doesn't mean they're good applicants, that doesn't mean they're eligible applicants, but that is the number of applicants at this time.
Other questions for Bree, even online? All right, and you want to turn over to Hannah?
Yeah,
Oh.
Hannah, do you wanna just give I just would love for you to share how many committees you have and how many grants you've awarded under the, under the mini grant program.
Sure. So for those I haven't met, my name is Hannah Buckland. I'm the Digital Equity Program Lead with the Office of Broadband. For the Digital Equity Act, our strategy in Minnesota is around these things we're calling digital connection committees. A digital connection committee is a self-selected work group, totally voluntary, can be formed by anyone, anything, a combination of businesses, towns, cities, counties, like everything coming together can form one. And so we have 98 digital connection committees registered as of this morning. If you look online, you'll see a map on our website, because we love our maps, of where the committees are located. It shows only 60 because I have not been able to keep up with it. But 98 right now. We need 2 more and I can break 100. So like, if you haven't signed up yet or encouraged your friends and family and even your enemies to form a committee, now's the time. Committees will be doing some optional assessment activities beginning April 3rd through June 30th. That'll form the basis of our state digital equity plan. With that, we offered some non-competitive mini grant opportunities to committees. That deadline has passed. We had 70 applicants, and we're able to award all of those mini grants because they're non-competitive. So as long as they manage to complete the application and get the right numbers in the right places, they're good to go. So I'm working on finalizing those now, and then everything continues.
It definitely feels right now like we're just going around and around the block. It's a lot going on right now, but really, so yeah, faster and faster. But everybody's working really hard and it's going well.
One more question. Region 9 asked me to ask you, are you gonna do any regional meetings? You think you was talked about on January 25th? Or any other conferences? I know you got a lot on your plate, but there's.
We're trying, we're definitely trying, I think that's, anytime that, I think I'll be at Region 9's annual meeting. So
Okay, good.
we're happy to come out specifically as well, but I think we're just trying to get through these 3 weeks of massive township meetings.
And
then
I've
we'll
gotten
pick
really
up.
good feedback from the township people about it. They're really pleased.
Good. Thank you.
So from August 21st to September 29th, we'll have a draft of the digital equity plan available for public comment, and tied in with that, I'm planning to do some regional visits to get feedback on the plan, and then we'll hopefully spend the month of October rewriting it so that it is Minnesota's plan.
Cool. You have a cardinal, by the way, that's function and it's pounding on the window. Yes, it's pathetic. So if you keep looking over there, yeah. Steve, did you have another question?
It's coming from.
Yeah, I'm curious if
Probably.
Connected Nations has identified any issues with the FCC map fabric, and if there's been any challenges. I know there's been several updates. They're supposedly getting near, but I've identified areas that are incorrect and don't know if they're being corrected or how that's being addressed.
Have you flagged up for anyone in our office? I know, I was just looking, Diane is at a township meeting today, but I know that we put in one, but don't ask me where, like, the location of it all is so far. But we can follow up with you on that. And if you are seeing incorrect areas, I know you know how to reach out to our office and flag as well. We're happy to look into some of those. But yes, we're working still with Connected Nation.
Other questions for Bree or Hannah? Okay. Checking online. on to the next agenda topic. It's the NTI update, and Tom, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. And, oh, you can show up on this one. Lovely. So I'm Tom Karst. I'm with the U.S. Department of Commerce, National Telecommunications and Information Administration. I'm the Federal Program Officer dedicated to Minnesota for the Broadband Equity, Access, and Deployment Program. I'm just going to do a light touch on where we are today and then how things are looking going forward with a big piece on kind of requirements and options. So BEAD is the $42.5 billion program that has the ultimate mandate of getting universal high-speed internet access to everyone in the country. That funding is going to flow through the state of Minnesota, in this case the Minnesota Office of Broadband Development, and then they will be the ones making the awards to the ultimate providers. As of today, they're working on the 5-year plan. You can think of this as the research project to look at where we are now, where we need to address, where we're going to go, and how we're going to get there. That's going to be due on this July 12th. While that's going on in parallel, the FCC is reviewing the challenges to their broadband data map. It's an ongoing process. We always recommend that people keep submitting challenges. They are moving faster than they were originally expecting. So we recommend submit your challenges, but also keep that information on hand so that it can be submitted later as a part of the state challenge process. On June 30th, NTI is going to take a look at those maps and say, here's the number of unserved locations, and that's going to determine how much funding the state is going to get. That's not the end of determining the un- and unserved areas. That's the next stage of starting, and depends on how much funding is going to come out. When that's announced, it's going to trigger a 180-day or 6-month deadline to put together the initial proposal. This is the administrative part of the program. It's going to include the state-level mapping challenge process, the rubric for which applications are going to be scored, and a much more detailed version of the plan. When that's submitted and NTI reviews and approves it, so that's going to take a little bit of time, that is going to trigger the 1-year deadline for the final proposal. That's going to be the ultimate, here are who we're going to award, here's how it's going to go, here's how we're going to get to universal access. I know there are a lot of questions and clarifications around that. More information to come down the road, not today, unfortunately. And then once things are awarded, projects are being built, the end of the program is going to be October of 2027, where service needs to be up and running for all the awarded projects. So on the 5-year action plan, $5 million has been awarded to put together this and the initial proposal. Again, it's the big research project. The piece I always like to highlight is local coordination. This has to cover the full geographic measures of the state, as well as your diverse groups of stakeholders and your un- and underrepresented communities. It's one where if we don't know, we don't know. The more information that we can learn, the more things that we can hear from people, the better the plan is going to be. Of course, it's a federal program. It's got a whole bunch of pieces to it. I'm not going to read through all of them. The slides are available afterward. I always recommend taking a look. And then the initial proposal, the heart of how we're going to get to universal access. Not surprisingly, this also has a whole bunch of pieces to it. I'm going to touch on a few of them today. The big one I want to highlight right now is the low-cost plans. The FCC's Affordable Connectivity Program, that $30 a month subsidy for qualifying households, is out there and running. When we're talking about low cost, NTI recommends that it doesn't hinge on that plan. That when we're looking at what it's gonna take to get people connected, what we mean by affordability, that it looks for a sustainable reach outside of that program. The proposal itself, we've got a few different ways that this can go. So NTIA, much more information to come on this. The piece we just want to touch on a little bit today is the opportunity to submit this in chunks. We're still working out exactly what they're going to be, but the big pieces are the mapping challenge process can be submitted and approved early, which means it can be run early, which means you can get the information on what locations are going to be eligible and serviceable as a part of BEAD to help people and providers prepare early. It's not a requirement. Every state's gonna handle this differently. Some states are gonna find the best results by packaging everything together and submitting it at once. So it's gonna very much vary on each state and how they see the best need for it. For the rubric itself, NTIA has a whole bunch of required points that need to be addressed. This is not the end. This is not the be-all, end-all of it. Minnesota has been running these programs for a long time. It has its own rubric. It has its own scorecards. They're going to be able to integrate those into this. The other piece is NTIA does not dictate what each of these scores will be. The state gets to set that. They have to touch these measures, but as far as weighting them goes, that's up to the proposal put together so that each program can be tailored to the state and its needs. There's an extremely high cost threshold. Now, the Notice of Funding Opportunity itself does state an explicit preference for fiber. There are going to be some states that have a funding shortfall where they can't achieve fiber with the funds that come in. There's a threshold that needs to be set for other technologies to be used. Ultimately, NTIA is going to be looking most assuredly at licensed fixed wireless. Now, if there is a fiber program that is still going to be the most cost effective, that is still going to be the right system, this threshold does not dictate that it must be used. It's about making alternative technologies eligible. Again, this is a number that's set by the state to be able to achieve universal access. And we've had a lot of questions on match, so I want to make sure that we address it. The Notice of Funding Opportunity sets a 25 match requirement as a base. That's the minimum requirement. If the state determines that a higher match is needed to be able to meet universal access, that's their prerogative, because they're the ones who are going to know what's most necessary. I also want to highlight that match is more than just money. In kind can be a significant part of this program. We always recommend creative thinking on how to address match. And the final proposal, I'm not going to touch on today because it's further out, but I wanted to include it so that folks can take a look at the slides to get an early understanding of the various pieces of it, what's going to need to be included, how it can be used, and then the sub-grantee obligations. So providers, take a look, review the slides. They are, I believe Carol has them posted already. And then I want to just make sure that I take a minute to address where we've been and where we're at as a state with this work. The Minnesota Office of Broadband Development has been one of the most well-established and most successful offices in the country. It has been a North Star for the development of other offices, as well as something that has been copied and pasted a lot. You know, it's been a leader in this space. When it comes to BEAD, we have one of the most proactive, forward-thinking offices and stakeholders. The office itself, as well as many of you in this room, have brought your questions, your concerns, and your ideas to NTIA, which has let us take them to our senior staff to be able to develop the guidance and the clarity that we're going to be issuing around this program. We've been a leader in the past. We're being a leader right now and helping to take their expertise and experience and shape what this program is going to look like for the rest of the country. You all know I like to share my contact information. As you have questions, as you have concerns, as you have ideas, let me know. Let Bree know. Let Hannah know. Let Diane know. The more we understand what's going on and what's needed, the more we'll be able to tailor within the requirements, regulations, statutory legislation, as much as we can, to what it's going to take to get universal access. And with that, any questions, comments, concerns, all that fun stuff?
Do you have any sense of individual challenges that have gone into the FCC? We just did a brand new survey, 600 people. We added the FCC link at the bottom. Is anybody challenging it, the individual households in Minnesota? Do you have any sense of that?
As far as Minnesota specifically, I don't. Nationwide, we are getting a decent amount of location challenges. There are going to be some statistics coming out from the FCC on which of those have been accepted. One piece to really be clear on is just because a challenge is rejected doesn't actually mean it's not updated on the map. So the FCC has been making updates on their end. So if they've already made the update to correct something, and then a challenge comes in, the challenge will get rejected, even though the update's already been made. It's just one of those odd areas of, if you do see a rejection, it's not necessarily a rejection. It may be that the FCC already made that update.
Other questions for Tom?
I got,
Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
and this may be outside of your purview, but the Boys Fort reservation, we got a $19.8 million federal grant. And any idea on the length of time for the release of those funds?
No. That is, so that's the Tribal Broadband Connectivity Program.
Yep.
I can't weigh in too much on that. I know it's a work in progress. Other than that, I don't have much I can share with you on that one.
Because it's frustrating, obviously, for the residents and the provider who's, as soon as that frost is gone, is ready to roll. No indication when the funding will arrive, so it's doubly challenging.
I can give a poke to our Midwest Tribal Broadband Connectivity Program, Federal Program Officer, and see if there's any information he's able to share as a, just due to the sovereign nation piece of that, there's always very little information we're allowed to share.
Other questions for Tom?
Penny, I will just say, the perspective of the Office of Broadband, and I think Tom for his kind words, it has been a really frustrating process for us because we ask these questions and for NTIA is not where we are right now, and we always feel like we're never getting ahead. So it has been a challenging process, but I think just recognizing, taking a moment to reflect on why we're frustrated is really quite remarkable. But also just know, as Tom said, I mean, the first role I have as executive director in this position is protecting the integrity of the office that all of you helped to build. So I hope you all know that you can reach reach out to us. Tom is a partner, NTIA is a partner, but it's a learning process that is just overwhelming on most days. So just appreciate everybody's patience as we're working through this process, but it is because of the foundation that exists. So should all be proud of that.
So just at a high level, I know we went through the slides, but the plan is 2023, they're submitting the plan and kind of collecting information and
The initial plan.
the initial plan.
And
Then in
the
20,
year for the final plan.
and then when is the final plan due, or is that not?
It's gonna be due December of 2024.
The final plan is due December 2024,
Yeah.
okay. And then you said there's 20% of the funds could be allocated. Is that after December 2024, or is that before that?
That's a work in progress.
Okay.
That's a work in progress. We're gonna have more guidance coming out on that.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, I think that's what is tailoring the discussion as well at the legislature, that if we don't continue to fund the office over the next 2 years, there will be no infrastructure dollars, and there'll be that gap again, because potentially the current guidelines with the 20% is probably not reachable for our office, at this point, until the final plan, depending on how the guidance works out.
So let's say the
So-
20% was not available.
So it's in our hands, but not like usable for infrastructure, most
Right,
likely,
right.
at this point, depending on where the approval process and our plans are all at.
Yeah, no, but I was just gonna get clarity, if, let's say, the 20% is in progress, more discussions there, but if there wasn't a 20%, final plan is due December of 2024, and so the funds, first time they could get allocated would be 2025.
Yeah.
Sometime in 2025.
And that'd be 20% in 2025.
No,
No,
that
no,
would
no,
potentially be all of it.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, all of it, yeah, leaving the 20% aside, all of it would be available in 2025, so the gap is really trying to figure out 2023, 2024, and potentially part of 2025. Yeah. Challenge. Okay. Well, any questions from anybody online? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands up, so it's just a minute shy of 11. Let's do this. Let's take a 15-minute break. We can refresh coffees, go to the restroom, and then we'll come back up at 11:15 and get going on the National Skills Coalition and Digital Equity